Hi, it's Colleen Schmidt once again from Divination Counseling Service. Today I want to talk about the solar eclipse that's going on December 14th, 2020. So we would also know this as a new moon. Actually, it is the last new moon, obviously, for the year 2020. So before I begin, I want to go through my thank yous and my gratitude. So I just want to thank everybody who has subscribed to either the website, the newsletter, or this YouTube channel. I want to thank you so much. Thank you for the likes and the comments, and really keep liking because we're building the channel. It's still very small, but it is an educational channel. So I didn't expect big splashes or miracles. So we're going to look at this chart in an educational way. And with that said, I do want to start off by pointing out that this is a very significant solar eclipse because it is actually also the end of an age. And that is featured, particularly in the United States, with a 29-degree Aquarius rising. And one of the things that I do want to point out as an astrologer is the importance of the 1 degree, the 0 degree, and the 29 degree. And just as 0 and 1 are marking new beginnings, maybe you know a little bit more about the beginning with a 1 than you do the 0, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But there's no denying that when you have a 29-degree ascendant, you are looking at the end of a cycle. And I thought it was pretty significant and wanted to talk about it in both my article as well as in this video because we are also looking at the end of some things politically. Example, we will have a new president in January, and it's becoming more and more apparent that that is going to take place, thankfully. In any event, staying off politics, it is so telling that we are dealing with cycles ending because the very next week, and I'll be doing a chart on this as well, on December 21st, both Saturn and Jupiter line up yet again, only this time they line up at 0 degrees, Aquarius 29 minutes, marking, without our knowing very much about it, the beginning of a new cycle. And one of the things that I thought was most significant as a Hellenistic astrologer talked about in one of the lectures I listened to recently, you know that each of these cycles is about 200 years. And the irony is, as a country, we're not much past 200 years, which means that substantially speaking, this country only really knows the Earth cycle. So is it kind of surprising that there's been such an emphasis in this country on money, making money, being 1%ers? There's such an emphasis on this. This last presidential administration really emphasized the concept of millionaires and billionaires. Now, we know that they do not know how we live. They are very out of touch. But they have been running this country for more than 200 years. Remember, we left England because they were taxing us. And then I guess in the late 1800s, the Republicans, please note this, the Republicans reestablished taxation. I was flabbergasted when I found that out. I mean, I kind of am shocked by some of the things. I love listening to Heather Cox. I want to give her a shout out. Great historian. I love listening to her live feeds from Facebook. And she has such an understanding of the history of this country, but she also has an understanding of the zeitgeist. And she is one of the people I think that refers to it as the ocean we swim in. Well, as an astrologer, I under zeitgeist too, because they are the energy with which we base our backbone of our life. So she's absolutely right when she said the sea we swim in. I thought it was really profound. Not sure she studies astrology, but that was profound, very profound for her to say that. So we're embarking on this new age, and the new age will last, again, 200 years. Air. We can't even fathom that as a country. Our history is not long enough. So we don't know what air will mean to the United States. But I can tell you this. If you think of Earth as the Capricorn, see, especially this recent hit of this recent, 20 years, I guess it is, looking at that Capricorn, which is the structures, particularly money structures. Remember, it's Earth. And what is happening to them will become increasingly more obvious as Neptune squares this particular eclipse chart. And it's in the first house. So I'm thinking, by it being in the first house, that we're going to be learning a lot, not such good stuff, I think, about our money, our structures in that respect. The cool thing is that in the age of Aquarius, which we're beginning on many levels, by the way, but let's look at that shortened ages, the ones that we can say that we'll deal with because it's in our lifetime. Air is, particularly in Aquarius, it's much more creative. It's not going to be about who has the most money, or who has the most money might be just the most creative. It's going to be about creativity. One of the astrologers I listened to emphasized creativity and flexibility. I can believe that, but there is, we're in a fixed air right now. So when we look at Aquarius, so flexibility, yeah, because Aquarians are about change, particularly change that is freeing. With that said, when we look at these charts, the first thing I'm going to jump to is the fact that the sun and the moon are not far away from Uranus on the dial. So it will be unpredictable. It will be an expansive time in the next month because of the switching of the age on the 21st, literally 1 week from this eclipse, but also because the eclipse chart itself, featuring the 23-degree Sagittarian, 8 minutes, on the dial equals Uranus at approximately 8 degrees of Aquarius. Now, the Uranus is profoundly special in all of this because it actually does better when it's in something like Aquarius. So, here we are, Uranus, it's really exalted in the sign of Aquarius, but it's actually in more of a detriment in the sign of Taurus. But it is going to get us to look at changing and making things more equitable in our structures, our finances, our earth, if you will. Structures, money, healthcare, because health is very physical. So isn't it interesting that COVID came just now? And that what COVID did was unveiled some very glaring issues, not only with our healthcare systems, but with our government in particular. And our government is still going to be going through a Pluto return. So as we change into the Aquarius age, we're still going to be struggling with Pluto till it catches up. And while it's struggling, it's going to be hitting the United States directly in the house of worth and value. So we still have a lot to go through as a country, though I predict it will be very healing, and there are many of us who are actually looking forward to the change, even knowing it'll be a little bit rough. But here again, if you've struggled at all in life, then a little bit rough is not so bad. If you're one of those entitled people who've really never struggled much in your life, there could be some fear overtaking you as we encroach on the new age. So with that said, I want to go into the chart and just show you, and of course we're always going to start off with the most basic chart and then add in until we get to the dial and then ultimately on to the asteroids. So stick around. This is going to get interesting. I'm back. So I just wanted to look at this chart and see what we have here. It looks from the chart, and again, I only start with the planets here. It looks like we have this very full 10th house, okay? Now, right off of this is the 19 degrees is right off. Remember, we talked about 10 degrees either way. So that makes all of this within the ascendant, or I'm sorry, within the midheaven range, okay? So we're looking at the south node. So it's interesting because remember, this is an eclipse. And one of the things that my teacher taught about eclipses were that we've been feeling this for 3 months, 12 weeks. And it has been very oppressive. It's been terribly oppressive. And I love this. It tells you the oppression is Neptune, because things are not clear, because we've been under illusions, because we have been dealing with sickness. So I wanted to point that out right away. I think that's really valuable to look at the South Node before we begin. The South Node is about timing. It's also about, in many respects, dealing with karma. Now, a lot of astrologers might agree or disagree on that one, but there's something very karmic about the nodes, no matter who the astrologer is. And having a South Node there, very close to Mercury, could tell us that our expectations, and I know I've talked about that in a last couple new moon, full moon events, that this South Node here is literally conjuncting within 10 minutes Mercury. Okay, let's just look at that. 1956, it's retrograde because it goes backwards. So it's coming from Mercury. And it's almost as though I want to say it's an oppression because of our thinking. Because it hit there and then it's moving on. So it's moving on, but it's still very valid in the 10th house. And I do believe that we have in our lives, all of us, we have with this virus had to look at some real stark realities. From a personal level all the way through to a global level. And this Mercury is also conjunct the sun and the moon. So the neat thing about the sun and the moon being here in the 10th house, take away this oppression, okay? Because I think we are going to be oppressed, particularly as we direct ourselves and think about our future. Because what does the future look like now? Does anyone really know that? We can say we're going back to normal. No, we're not. I can assure you that is the last thing we're doing. So there's this uncertainty. And here you see it, okay? This is not the only thing squaring that Neptune. Everything from the midheaven itself all the way to this sun in that 10th house squares Neptune. And that is almost like a reality jolt, which in a way is very necessary and very needed, and I think will be very helpful to people overall once they get past the initial shocks. Some of us will be shocked, some not so much. The sun and moon there builds confidence, though, for the future. It's also about how we want to be seen in the world, okay? And this could be our country. This could be a global matter, okay? There's something I want to point out here, though, too, that's kind of obvious. And again, this is not a political situation, but if you study asteroid, and one of the things that I do is political astrology. So in other words, I read what other people write. I write things myself. I don't do it on this because I really want to keep this educational, though this could be a part of our learning. This 23-degree 8-minute of Sagittarius, this here, this is eclipsing the president. And think about what he's going through. He is being so eclipsed right now. Think about things like, what is the eclipse asking of him? It's asking him to grow up, to move on, to be mature, because that's what the eclipse is asking all of us to do, is grow up a little bit, especially if you're aspected in any way by those planets up there, okay? I can also tell you that the majority of what you're going to experience as a result of that energy, you're already feeling. You've been feeling, because it's something that goes on for about 12 weeks. So this has been commencing for some time. So it's a very interesting configuration here. Think about what sun and moon are ruled by. Well, they're ruled by Jupiter here in the 12th. And it's interesting because the people who are maybe doing a little bit better expanding, and look at this Jupiter as it sextiles perfectly to Venus, okay? It's a great connection too here of earth and of water. This Jupiter here, now notice that we've got another 23 degrees, although this is Capricorn, that does make that sort of an inconjunct, and they have to be very close. These are things that people do not talk about as much, because in order for them to really be fully in aspect, they really should be within a degree. Well, it is. So we see here that there's great transformation taking place. People are, again, transformation of associates, transformation of the bigger, of our goals even, because that's the 11th house. But 11th house is also affiliated with associates and people that we affiliate with. So there's a transformation in all of that going on, and it will continue, but it's all apparently very much a part of our healing, Jupiter. And it's helping us to expand ourselves spiritually. So as a result of all this, we're becoming better people. I do believe that's true. Some people will be slower to get there. I admit that. Not every one of us is going to ascend at the same speed. Some of us, especially people who, if you're looking at this video, you're probably one of those people that already knew this was coming, was waiting in anticipation with bated breath, because we're all looking forward to it, but we're not part of the old established white man elite. Okay? I say it that way because that is what's kind of ruled up until now. That will no longer be true. And it's not just a fluke with the next president. No. This is the beginning globally of this kind of change. So even though this is what our chart looks like in the United States, so as we go on and we're expanding, particularly who we are, and this is a really healthy way to heal. We want to heal internally, okay? I want to point out this. Look at this, 29 degrees, 44 minutes. Now, this is only 4 minutes away from the 29th degree. Again, you get that sense that we are at the end of a cycle. That the people who are fearful might be fearful because this is scary to them. It is, how do I put this? It is the end of life as they know it, or as we know it, thankfully. But, when I was growing up, everyone always thought the ascension would be people dying off, going somewhere else, and then the world would end. But that's not really how it works. And I think about that now and I laugh. I even, I try not to step on people's toes too much with this sort of thing. I've been involved in this kind of work my whole life. And I understand that, I do understand that ascension is really the only place you can do that is here. you can't really ascend when you're all consciousness. You can only really ascend when you're dealing with mass, which is what we're here and involved in. So I do want to point that out. I just think that's funny. So when you look at the book of Revelations and it talks about the four horsemen and all the other dire things, really look around. Could it be more true? That's all I have to say. So just moving on from there, we are healing, and we're healing in a spiritual way. And we're beginning to accept that there are structures within that spirituality that are higher than the structures that we have put into place. That's a really important concept. So we really are healing. It's oppressive right now, but we're really healing, and we're thinking a lot about our future and what we're doing and what our career is and how we want to be seen professionally, and how much is that going to heal as a result of, and I love this, 12th house, because we're now working virtually. I have to admit, I love working virtually. I kind of jumped the gun about 10 years ago, really wanted to set up virtual classes, but it was too soon. So I'm hoping to get there again in a time that's more appropriate. In any event, some people working in the 12th house can feel very limiting, but for other people, working from the 12th house is a way to, and remember, what's opposite the 12th is the 6th, which is, it's a way to make your days less stressful. It's a way to be healthier within yourself, because once you are out there in the world, then you're subject to the whims and moods and everything else of other people. Look at all how empty this is over here. So I should talk about that for a minute before I start building everything. This chart also features what I call the quadrant of out in the world and what that we offer to the world, and how we are in the world. And it also highlights the first two houses, the I am house and I am worth house, or I own house. So these two houses are still very, very personal, as is the third, but we have nothing in there yet. This is really, think about Venus starting here in the 9th. Really this whole thing starts from the 10th, but even this Venus here in the 9th, it's kind of a reminder of worth and money, but it comes along with our preconceived concepts and expectations, and it really does square, and I like this, the par of fortune. It also squares the ascendant, okay, in Aquarius. So it's squaring, the end of that age or the end of that time. So again, I'm one of the real optimistic people, and I really believe this is about healing and ascending on a very spiritual level, regardless of what you do. I mean, not all of us are here for spirituality, but I think that when you're going into an air age, there is going to be a little bit more concentration on what is occurring within us as well as without us. Okay, so in other words, got to be somewhat of a decent person, right? I mean, it's Aquarian and all, humanitarian and things like that. So here we are. We don't really have a good awareness of ourselves with Neptune here. It's too fuzzy, too foggy. Things are just not clear because of all the things going on in the outer world. But there is this need to change in terms of what we're worth, to free ourselves, which is also, I feel like, working in the 12th house is very freeing, speaking from experience. The Mars does put a strong emphasis, and it trines all of these things, that need to make money, or that ability to create a value system of self-worth. I, again, attribute that to a little bit of healing, because it's in Aries, trining Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, the planet of expansion. So I think that all bodes really, really well here. The North Node I like is with the family and close connections. I do believe it's time to get back to that level of one-on-one, to the ability to shine the mirror on the people around you, which can really only happen in a much more intimate or a one-on-one type of manner. I don't want to say intimate as in romance and all that. No, children are also karmatically connected to us, but there's a way that people who are close to us have of shining a mirror to us to help us have a greater sense of our own awareness. Now, I'm going to add in the trans-Neptunians, which I do like to do. So let's get those guys in there, okay? Notice how the chart fills out. So the very first thing you've got to notice here is wow, okay? And we really are going to be learning a lot about financial matters of like the government, even within our relationships. It's shared monies. It's monies that are like the group monies, more or less, okay? And that again, this Poseidon here is in a kind of close trine with this Neptune sitting down here in the first house. So I think it adds and aids to so there's an education, news, things like that will aid our ability to gain some concepts of clarity. The trans-Neptunians also tend to fill in the rest of the chart, okay? Because it was pretty dead over there until we put everything in. And once everything got put in, it filled out exponentially, particularly on this side of the chart. It balanced us out, so to speak. And it makes me want to say things like, well, the slow movers, what's going on, you know, Zeus and Apollon and Poseidon and Vulcanus, even Hades and Kronos here. They kind of fill in the rest of our creating more of a balance. So the slow movers are helping us create a little balance. Admetus down here in the third. You know, Admetus in the third does mean that there's an effort, because remember, this is the house of communications. This is a trans-Neptunian related to communications and education. And here, you know, there's a tendency to get stuck in one's thinking because of Admetus, but it's also about getting to the bottom of the matter. So it has a little bit of a benefit there as well. Okay? That's an interesting concept in all of this. All right. And we're going to check this out on Solar Fire. I'm going to add in the dial next, and then we're going to add in the rest of the asteroids on the angles. But you know, Vulcanus is this. It's all these are retrograde, by the way, so they're not as noticeable either. But they're there. They're still acting. And I think that this is talking about maybe even being more restraining about what's going on here or excited about what's going on here, depending on the circumstance. So you might be excited, then you have to restrain your behavior. The Vulcanus is a pressure, and the pressure is in the sixth house, you know, and when you think about that in terms of how we're kind of swapping up our day-to-day reality a little bit, I think that it also is a reminder. And by the way, this Vulcanus is going to be very much a part of this square or this cross, because Uranus at 7 degrees, actually it's retrograde, so I said 8 earlier, it's 7. I knew it was close. Is going to be squaring the Jupiter-Saturn in the 21st chart, and Vulcanus will be a part of that. So there's this great deal of pressure toward revolutionizing, changing things. And we'll get to that on the 21st. But I do want you to know that Vulcanus plays a big role in it. There's a lot of pressure on a day-to-day reality, whether it's about staying healthy or it's about trying to achieve some kind of financial goal. So there's a basic. So I want to pull up now. This is the new moon chart. Okay, let me get out of the dial. Let's go back. And we're looking at things like, look how full the chart got. It's so weird up here that it's really difficult to see where the house begins and ends. This is the 10th house, but it's really marked all the way to here because this ninth house is so full and crazy. And we'll get to that. I mean, ninth house is the house of change. It's not surprising to see. It's also change of government and system, structures, big structures. I think the government's more a 10th house border, but which again is highlighted, but the ninth house is really the house of change. So let's go back to that dial. I was all prepared and then switched. So I actually went to the sun moon, and I want you to see how close within a degree. Okay, because again, I like to work very, very close because I work with so many things, it's just easier for me to work that way. So if I look at where the sun and the moon are on the dial, you can see down below here that the Uranus is the next thing that it's going to hit. Okay. Also, look at what's with Uranus. That idea of being alone or going it alone. And all things considered, I think it has to do with maybe restrictions, but also it has to do with the fact that in the next month or so, a lot of people will move away from where they were, who they were, and become what they're going, and begin the journey to become what they're going to be. And that is a part of this revolution, if you will, because that's what I do want to think of it as. I don't want to think of it just as a change of an age. I think that's really important to see. Now, it's 2308 here. I have a 2302 regardless. 2308. So I have to go 2230 to reach the axis. So I'm going to do it with you, okay? So if 83, and I'm going to go with 08, and I subtract 2230 from that, I'm going to get, I get 28. 38 would be minus 2230 would be 28. So to bring us all the way to here, roughly. I'm gonna go with that. I think it's a little bit less. I think it's 28. We can do that. Look at that Cupido Jupiter. Look at the Hades Mars. I like looking at what's here. I mean, this is, Cupido Jupiter is there luck with a building or luck being in a family? Hades Mars are all actions. This could be research though, but are all our actions above board? Okay, I on this axis. Okay, before I get to that, let's go back here a minute. I didn't talk about as much the trans-Pluto with Kronos. I don't study trans-Pluto as much. I can tell you a little bit I've studied. It is about kind of going overboard. And I really should know that because it's really conjuncting a planet in my chart natally. So I should know more than I do. But I did note that it means that somebody's overboard or something is overboard. And this could be authorities overreaching, authorities who've not behaved well. I know that a lot of people in restriction times and in restriction places, and we're going through a lot of that, also tend to blame the authorities and think they go too far. So it could be any number of things there. So I'm going to go back here to, okay, now I can go this way. You see how not a lot changes in a few minutes. There we are. So, okay, here we are. And the, I want to make sure I did my math right. So like me to mess up the math. No, I did the math correctly. Okay. So double checking my math as always. Look at this Poseidon ascendant. It does highlight the news, doesn't it? It also highlights the restrictions and keeping environments with few people. Adamitos ascendant, keeping with parameters of the CDC. So that's kind of exciting, but this does highlight the news. And it just kind of, again, makes me wonder what could possibly be going on. And what is there with this Calypso here? what is this that we don't know? Because that's really kind of letting us know there's a lot going on we don't know about. I believe that with this new moon, we are opening cans of worms for information that we did not previously had. So there could be things like whistleblowers, whether it be at your job specifically or the government in particularly. So a lot of things could start coming out, and all it keeps telling us is that we really don't know everything. So I thought that was pretty telling and just wanted to point that out. The other thing I want to point out is Cassandra's here, and let's go back to this wheel. Oh, before we go, just for the heck of it, I didn't do this, so I apologize. Some things I do ahead of time. I didn't get real far here. I did want to point out Hade's node also could be dealing with issues of illness. I also wanted to point out the Mars ascendant again here, but look what's down here is Poseidon. We're learning a lot about a health issue, and remember that pandemic has been hanging out down here as well. Thucydides or whatever, I can't even say it. Okay, so Thucydides. Okay, so the things I also wanted to look at while I was here is not just that, but also let's look at 2230. Yeah, perfect. Here's the money thing, okay? But it equals Ceres, which is food. So there's going to be a highlight again on helping people who do not have, but this is also about taking care of oneself, because if you really look at this, there's an ascendant here, ascendant to a Ceres, but also, which is food or meals, and putting an emphasis on that. But look at this. It's also about taking care of yourself, and then it has death. Okay? So we are going to have, I think, more people die. I think that's not a surprise to anybody. Makes me wonder about, I think it's the sadness that people will feel over the holidays when they're missing people in their families. I do believe that's when it really hits. And it talks about how complicated things are. So again, pretty telling for where we are in the world. Look at all the pressures on people who are in authorities. This includes doctors, by the way. So much pressure on them. So let's go to our angles before this video gets way too long. So as we are looking at the chart with all the bells and whistles, it's very busy, okay? So I'm not going to talk, I'm only going to stick with these angles, okay? But I do want to point out that with this angle up here, there's a tremendous amount of influence coming this way, okay? So we talk about here the sense of logic and being logical, but it also talks about when you look up here at this uranium, here, let me grab, here we go, my new moon, okay, in asteroid version, because see how so many of these things are here, and then the arrow falls right on that, and it says to me, is that Hebe or is that? So let's go look, all right? So we're looking at 3 degrees of Capricorn. I'm going to go to my 3 degrees of Capricorn arena and basically look at what falls up there and in that later degree of Scorpio. Okay, because we're looking at that 9th house. So as we go from the 9th house to, and I'm sorry, it's 12 degrees of Sagittarius. Phew, thank goodness, because that takes a lot out. That would have been a heck of a reading there. But now that I really look at what I'm looking at, it's 12 degrees of, so it's actually right here. So that, it goes like this. You see that zigzaggy? Yeah, it gets tough to read when you start putting a lot of stuff in a chart. It really does. So the things that we're really looking at are literally only those things that fell into Sagittarius. But look at this. There's an enabling of death or sadness. and people who are bonding over sadness, okay? But what is that enabling? Is it people serving people who are dying, taking care of them? Is that the service that they're providing? Service people could also be the people who are dying with that configuration. So there's a lot about that. Now, this is hunting for your opportunities, okay? So it goes right. You're also bonding with people who are, again, hunting for their opportunities. Now, as we move through Sagittarius, now remember, all of this is here, okay? There is a lot of, there's a pride issue here. And here's where I go with ego. You know, I have a saying, I taught yoga for a long, long time and as a yogi. And there's a saying that we have about leaving your ego at the door. And ego is a really big part here, I believe, of the difficulties that are going on. Now, it's not on the angle. So it's not something, the angle actually stops with the sun and the moon at 23 degrees. Actually, they're not even on this chart, they're barely in. But see, right, it just stops there. It doesn't go any further. But this is a reminder that, as I had mentioned earlier in this video, that you have to be careful what your expectations are. What are we expecting from this? And I hope that we're not expecting anything, because having no expectations is better. Oh, I do sound like the yoga teacher. No ego, no expectations, no judgments. It is a way. Anyway, remember, we have a lot of stuff in this 12th house, spiritual stuff. I had to throw it in. So as we're looking at now what would be this midheaven, okay, all of this, as we already spoke about, comes into play. But look at also this enabling, this death, and this bonding. They are also square to what falls here. And all of this is a part of this ascendant. So you're bonding with people that you love, but without boundaries. If you're enabling them, particularly without boundaries, you're just creating chaos. You know, you have to ask yourself, when Cassandra comes to the ascendant, which I like actually, because I'm a teacher, and that's a part of teaching is Cassandra. But it also brings to mind, are people listening? Because remember, a lot of news is coming to us this month. Are people listening? When you correct your children, are they listening? When you tell your parents something, are they listening? Okay, so, and I said parents because it's a more, it's people that you love. Is it your spouse? Is it your boyfriend, your girlfriend? Are they behaving in a manner that's just, no matter how much you love them, it's just not acceptable? Things are not what you expected. Not what you expected. Probably not what you expected to hear. But intuitively, meh, you know, pretty much right on, but not what we expected. This is where I see the parent too. See, Sirius is there. Remember, we talked about Sirius when we looked at the Aries point, because Sirius is a part of the Aries point. It's only 30 minutes away. So you're at a meet, you're feeling very stuck, very limited. Sirius. It also means to me that they're going to be limiting a lot of restaurants and a lot of things that, you know, that we eat at, and it is going to cause suffering to the service industry. I hate saying that. I myself try as much as I can to patronize my favorite places. Even now, we don't go out like we used to. Well, we don't go out at all, but we still do takeout at least twice a week. And I like to hit, and I still tip 20% and the whole nine, because these people are suffering, and we do need to, if we can afford it, we need to patronize these places. The EOS here, right here, explains how people that we love are causing commotion in our lives. Maybe they're not behaving right. And again, look at the enabling. But it's also about, and everybody feels stuck and there seems to be delays everywhere. And that's just something to be expected, even as things get back to normal. I think everything's just going to expect it. There's going to be some delay. The EOS, though, further complicates it because it really scatters the energy, and it really does feature early mornings. And what that means is that things really start happening in early mornings, but sometimes I tell people that's how you get the best jump on your day. Don't sleep too late, because by then chaos is already ensued. And now you woke up and you're in the thick of it. The other angles that are affected, there's not as much here. It does refer to families. That's where our close connections and contacts are, which is, I think, again, that's what grounds us. But even as we spend time with their families, we're reminded here of how people tend to overreact because of their emotional scars and emotional wounds. That people will act out, okay? And it is just part of their personal suffering. It's retrograde, but it's still going to come to your attention, whether it's in your life directly or if it's something you're noticing in the press. Here we see withdrawal. I do feel that people are, again, going to have to withdraw from one another, okay? Photography is coming into play, okay? So it could be that we're going to see pictures, that we're going to have, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Sometimes we don't believe anything till we see it pictures. But I do believe this withdrawal is because things just get so bad. We withdraw from others because things get so bad. And this could be in bonding and enabling. I just can't stand to be around certain people. This will be what you'll hear. I just can't do that anymore. It could be that. It could be the illness. The corona is so bad that, now we're again being forced to separate again around a holiday, which can have its own psychological damage, unfortunately. So we are feeling stuck. We are so feeling stuck at Amit. And Amit is not far from IC. Again, not really enough to be in an angle, but enough to cast a little bit of a shadow. Adamite, however, is on the angle, so it will play a huge role in what's coming. The big concern here is Malapine, and even though this Shiva is retrograde, meaning, may not act as it normally would, in other words, you might be deciding that it's time to withdraw. Malapine tells you that things are getting worse. And this might be the actions of other people, because we saw that up here, that some people just are not going to behave well. And they're not following the rules. And I think that becomes a bigger issue. And if confronted, you're only going to be dealing with their psychological damage, not so much their logic, because logic, which is where the victory would be, is just not on the angle for this chart. It's in the change. It's helping us to change, but it's not on the angle. So let's come back. So as I come back to you, okay, I want to talk about what all this kind of means, summing it up. I want to spend a lot of time on it because it is the last eclipse of the year. It's a very significant eclipse. It's hitting the outgoing president like nasties. It's really the last eclipse in this age, and it just has a lot of significance and healing. And I think healing is a choice, because I think right now expectations will play a huge part in what direction you go. So I'm going to leave it there. And thank you for sharing your time with me. And thank you for allowing me into your life. And as always, most importantly, I wish you all only happy readings. Take care until next time.